Manchester began its journey as a modest market town, but over time it would rise to become the driving force of the Industrial Revolution. Powered by canals, cotton mills, railways, and relentless innovation, the city reshaped global industry and transformed urban life forever. In this AI reconstruction, we travel through historic Manchester, from its early streets and waterways to the factories, warehouses, and civic landmarks that earned it the title Cottonopolis. If you enjoy exploring cities through history, subscribe to the channel and share your suggestions for the next city or era you'd like to see brought back to life. In the mid-18th century, Manchester was still a small and unassuming market town, surrounded by open fields, slow-moving rivers, and scattered rural villages. Life here followed natural rhythms. Church bells marked the hours, markets defined the week, and most people lived close to the land. The skyline was modest, shaped by church towers rather than factory chimneys, and daily life revolved around farming, local trade, and cottage-based textile work. Cotton at this time was spun and woven by hand inside homes. Families worked together in small rooms, using simple tools passed down through generations. Production was slow, personal, and deeply connected to domestic life. Few residents could have imagined that within little more than a century, this quiet settlement would transform into one of the most powerful industrial cities on Earth, setting the stage for a revolution that would permanently change how the world worked, lived, and traded. During the 18th century, the area we now know as St. Peter's Square was little more than open land on the edge of Manchester. It marked a gentle transition between the compact town and the surrounding countryside. Fields stretched outward, broken only by footpaths and grazing land. In 1788, Peter's Church was constructed here, signaling Manchester's slow but steady expansion beyond its medieval core. The church became a visible marker of growth, standing at the threshold of change. Within a few decades, what had once been farmland would be surrounded by streets, rail lines, and industrial buildings. St. Peter's Square would eventually become one of the city's most important civic spaces, witnessing both Manchester's rapid rise and the social tensions that came with it. As the early 19th century arrived, Manchester began transforming at an unprecedented pace. In areas such as Ancoats, vast cotton mills rose along canals and waterways. Companies like McConnell and Company built towering brick factories powered by steam engines and driven by global demand. These mills operated day and night, their machines never resting, their presence reshaping both the landscape and daily life. Cotton arrived from across the world, shipped through ports and carried inland by canals. Inside the mills, thousands of workers labored under strict schedules and harsh conditions. Entire neighborhoods formed around these factories, earning Manchester its famous name, Cottonopolis, a title that reflected both its wealth and its dependence on industrial production. From the quiet heights of Kersal Moor, the scale of this transformation was impossible to ignore. By the early 1850s, Manchester presented a striking contrast. In the foreground, green fields and patches of countryside still survived. Beyond them, the city rose dense and vast, alive with movement, smoke, and sound. Hundreds of textile mills crowded the skyline, their chimneys releasing constant plumes of coal smoke that marked the rhythm of industrial life. Cotton flowed in from distant continents and flowed out again as finished cloth, powering Britain's economy and feeding global markets. Wealth accumulated rapidly, but so did overcrowding, pollution, and social inequality. Manchester became both a symbol of progress and a warning of industrial excess. This mid-19th century illustration shows a cotton mill at Somerset near Bury, one of many industrial settlements that surrounded Manchester during the height of the Industrial Revolution. Built beside a river and connected by canals, the mill stands as a symbol of mechanical power and mass production. Tall chimneys pour smoke into the sky, signaling non-stop operation. Waterways were the lifelines of this system. They supplied power, transported raw cotton, and carried finished goods to markets across Britain and beyond. Scenes like this spread across Greater Manchester and Lancashire, transforming quiet rural valleys into vast industrial corridors dominated by brick, iron, and steam. Amid this industrial intensity, Manchester also invested in knowledge and self-improvement. Opened in 1855, the Manchester Free Library marked a major milestone in the city's social history. It was among the first free public libraries in the world, created to give ordinary citizens access to books, education, and opportunity, at a time when factory workers labored long hours in harsh conditions. The library offered a rare space of quiet and reflection. Clerks, artisans, factory workers, and students could enter freely to read newspapers, study science, or educate themselves after exhausting days in the mills. The building stood as proof that Manchester believed progress was not only mechanical, but intellectual. Completed in the mid-1860s, the Free Trade Hall became one of Manchester's most powerful symbols, not of industry, but of ideas built on the site of the Peterloo Massacre. It carried deep historical meaning. Within its walls, speeches, concerts, and political gatherings shaped public opinion during a time of rapid economic and social change. Thousands gathered here to debate free trade, workers' rights, and the future of Britain's economy. The hall echoed with the voices of reformers, industrialists, and international speakers, reflecting Manchester's growing influence far beyond Britain's borders. Constructed between the late 1860s and early 1870s, the Royal Exchange stood at the very center of Manchester's global power. This was not merely a building, it was the nerve center of the world cotton trade. Merchants from across Britain and beyond gathered daily beneath its vast roof, negotiating prices that shaped economies on multiple continents. Here, Manchester truly earned the name Cottonopolis. Fortunes were made and lost in a single day, and the exchange's grand classical architecture symbolized confidence, wealth, and industrial dominance. It reflected a belief that commerce itself was a civilizing force driving progress and modernity. By the latter half of the 19th century, Manchester's skyline had transformed beyond recognition. A dense forest of smoking chimneys dominated the horizon, pumping coal smoke day and night. This was the engine room of the Industrial Revolution, loud, relentless, and powerful. Factories, mills, and foundries operated without pause, fueling Britain's dominance in global manufacturing. The air was thick with soot, yet the city pulsed with opportunity. Manchester had become a place where raw materials were turned into wealth on an unprecedented scale. This is Manchester Town Hall in the late 19th century, a powerful symbol of the city's confidence at the height of its industrial strength. Completed in the late 1870s, its grand Victorian Gothic design reflected Manchester's status as the world's leading industrial city. With its towering clock and richly decorated facade, the building was meant to rival Europe's great civic landmarks. More than a seat of government, Town Hall represented ambition, civic pride, and the extraordinary rise of a city that had grown from a modest market town into the global capital of cotton within just over a century.